Hey everyone, Evan Kirstel with another great discussion today about CPaaS with the CPaaS Acceleration Alliance panel series. Some great thought leaders and industry insiders. We're going to talk all about the CPaaS marketplace, where it's been, where it's going, and some additional insights into the future of the CPaaS super exciting marketplace. Let's start off with some introductions. Tony, introduce yourself if you would, and a little bit about your background, and share with our audience where you are, because I'm extremely jealous based on your physical location as well.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for having me here. I'm very excited to go back to the future, if I may say. And as Evan said, I've moved to the beautiful island of Cyprus a year and a half
Oh,
ago
oh my goodness.
because my company now is in 80 countries. We don't have any offices. So why be in San Francisco? Why be in central London? And so I took that decision, and I have to say I don't regret it. And a bit of myself. So I'm why I'm here. I'm here because I founded Nexmo, which is one of the leading CPaaS providers, 12 years ago now. And this company started with messaging, went to voice and other channels later on. Grew rapidly to 100 million of revenue in the first 5 years. Went public in mid 2016 by merging with Vonage. I stayed there for a couple of years, and then I left. The company was acquired last year by Ericsson for $6.5 billion, the largest acquisition to date. And since then, in January 2020, after I took some time off, I started in a new venture in software called Oyster, which is a global employment platform, which is first and foremost a mission-driven company. We're here to remove all the barriers in front of companies to tap into the global talent pool. And this company, thanks to the shift to remote work and this liberation of the workplace and democratization of opportunities, we were able to grow rapidly as well. We are already over $1 billion in valuation, 650 people distributed in 80 countries, which enables me to be wherever I want to be. And I've decided to be here in Cyprus. Thank you for having me today.
Yeah, thanks for being here. We can't wait to hear your insights on the marketplace and entrepreneurship and all that good stuff. Another Frenchman here, Jean, a former Telestax co-founder, a very storied company in this space. Jean, introduce yourself, say hello, come off mute, and share a little bit about your background.
Hey everyone, thanks for having me in the live stream today. I'm one of the co-founders of Telestax, which is a company that was started in 2011. It basically was spinning out of Red Hat, where we were doing basically open source telecom middleware, and we decided to take it on ourselves to grow the community and help the industry around democratizing open source in telecom. And basically, we grew in that business and actually helped along the way a number of CPaaS provider where our open source software was actually used, and decided to pivot in 2018 to CPaaS enablement. So basically helping service provider based on our company history and DNA to move forward with CPaaS and not just standby, and basically providing a full white label CPaaS service that they can go to market with to their enterprise customer to actually sell CPaaS services as well. And so we sold the company in about 1 year and a half ago to Mavenir, and I'm still with Mavenir today.
Fantastic. Well, Mavenir is a company that's making lots of waves, very exciting, newer entrant in the telecom infrastructure space. Jason, former CEO at Tropo, one of the early innovators in CPaaS. Jason, how are you?
I'm doing well, thank you. And thanks for having me here, Evan. It's good to catch up with Tony and John as well. I haven't seen you guys for a while. So my background is I've been in telecom software since early in my career. I was an early employee at Genesys, which was is a contact software company, contact center software company. And after that, did various business roles, got back into the telecom space through a open source project called Adhesion, which really was Ruby on Rails for telecom back in the day. We took that, we merged in with Foxeo at the time, and then created Tropo and spun that out. I believe we spun it out or created the platform almost to the same month as Twilio launched. So we were all very early in this space, and I think that's why we're here talking. We had grown that successfully and ultimately sold that to Cisco in May of 2015. And there we became the developer platform and led the developer capabilities for the WebEx platform. Ultimately, ran the WebEx Teams group, did a lot of different roles while I was there. Was there just shy of 4 years in the collaboration software group. Learned a ton in what we did there. And then I left after finishing my earnout and delivering some new products there, and took 6 months off, which was great, when Intel reached out and recruited me, along with other discussions I was having on what I wanted to do next. And I'm now at Intel doing something completely different around modernizing our commercial platform within the client compute group around vPro.
Very cool. Well, it's great to hear some of the backstory here, because this space is about evolution as much as revolution. And, you have some great insights and stories to share, all of you. But let's dive in first with Tony. Speaking of CPaaS and the history of this, space, what happened around 2010 that caused all of these startups, your startup, to kind of pop up? What was going on back in the day?
The mashup of APIs with communication was starting to happen. And let me tell you my story, how I ended up starting Nexmo. I was working for one of the leading providers back then of messaging platforms called Mblocks, that was acquired by Cinch. Now it's part of Cinch. And they gave me this project. It's called API. Like, nobody knew what APIs were. This was 2008. And they told me, go test it. And I went, I tested it. Customers loved it. And for some reasons, the company decided that it's not going to move forward with that small bet that they were making. But I left this company. I was going to do my business school in Switzerland. So I had a year there, and I was obsessed with that opportunity. So I started looking at the opportunity from all angles, from a marketing, sales, strategy, innovation, and so on and so forth. And at the end of my business school, I decided I want to start this business. I want to use APIs as a way to reduce the barriers to entry, because you have to remember, back then you had to be a telecom developer to be able to access messaging. You had to learn protocols like SMPP and very low level signaling, SS7, and like there were maybe 300 people on earth that used to know how to do these things. But with APIs, you could totally democratize the access to the messaging network and drop the barrier to entry to millions of web developers. And that's really the trigger, really, this mashup between API technologies and telecommunication networks that started in that phase that made messaging for APIs possible. And then we were focused on messaging. Twilio was focused on voice. Tropo was also focused on voice, I believe, and they started doing some messaging. I remember I met the team at Voxeo in your office. We were 3 people at Nexmo. We were talking about a partnership, and then it started converging, right? So voice and messaging started to converge, and suddenly you had this category called CPaaS. That was this combination of voice and messaging, and eventually video came in later. This programmable communication through APIs became the category.
Yeah, what a cool flashback. What about you, John? What was attractive, compelling about the space back around when you co-founded Telestax?
Yeah, for us, it was actually when we co-founded Telestax, we were already, having developed MobiSense, which was the name of the open source community back then. And we were not at the start, focused on CPaaS. We were more focused on providing a better way for developers in the carrier network in terms of creating application and services for their customers to help them with a better infrastructure. So that's where we basically built all of the kind of middleware layer to help telecom application developers. And as part of this, basically, there is a number of, as Tony mentioned, number of low-level protocol stack we were developing and offering, which actually got used, as I mentioned earlier, by a number of carriers as well as a number of CPaaS, and probably still in use today. I think I even met you, Tony, and Eric, your CTO, back then in London, related to some of the stacks that we were doing as well in Telestacks. And actually, this evolved more or less naturally with the market. As Tony was mentioning, APIs were starting to eat the world, and we basically started to, in that mindset of helping developers, not having to learn all of the complex telecom protocol of the world, and just be able to consume and mash up telecom communication, let's say communication capabilities. We started to move up the chain and started to provide APIs in the open source as well. And what came out of this from the community and from our customers is that this is cool in the open source. It's cool as the community, but they want to be able to get faster to it. And this is where we moved into CPaaS enablement, because for a carrier to operate kind of CPaaS in their network, this was a major headache and was taking years to actually go to market. So we actually moved from and completely changed the DNA of the company, actually moving from an open source company to a cloud-based company, and started to offer kind of white label service to service provider to go to market with CPaaS. So that's how we got basically into the CPaaS market and into the CPaaS world.
Fantastic stories. And Jason, what time did, CPaaS wasn't a term of art back then, but where did you find or see the first opportunities in this space?
Yeah, so with Adhesion, it was really about the different open source platforms coming up like Asterisk and FreeSwitch that began to democratize access to telecom and making those easier to use. And when we joined Voxeo was very much focused on enterprisey things like VXML and CCXML and all the heavy lifting around that. And what they saw in what we were doing at Adhesion and within Tropo is up-leveling that any web developer could come and approach this. And there's no real learning curve, right? Back to Tony's point. Once you've got the APIs, the capabilities, now everyone can start using this platform. It's not the domain of specialized knowledge. And so we launched Tropo, and we took it a step further. We effectively provided a scripting container that allowed you to, early AWS Lambda type of an implementation to do that. So we really said, hey, don't even worry about an API, just write a script and be off and running. And I think that combined with AWS really beginning to take off, sprung up a whole new set of startups. And an early user of ours was actually WhatsApp that would use this for multiple identity and things like this. And they were launching with very few people. They looked to use APIs and cloud platforms, the trend of what was happening within cloud services. So I think those things combined to create what was a perfect storm of startups looking to do or grow quickly with less capital intensive needs, and what we could do on that and open up the whole telecom world, which, as Tony pointed out before, was the sole domain of highly specialized knowledge. And I think we all pushed against that and opened that up.
Yeah, indeed. And reInvent is this week at AWS reInvent in Las Vegas. And imagine that, Amazon, one of the biggest CPaaS players and contact center providers now. Who would have thought 10 years ago? Tony, what say you? How's the space evolved? Has it been according to your thoughts of how it would unfold, or have you been surprised at all over the last 10 years?
Yeah, the easy answer is yes, and I'm going to elaborate on that. But before that, I want to add what Jason said. There was this the mashup between APIs and telcos, but there was also something happening in the world, this explosion of messaging applications. So Jason mentioned WhatsApp. There was 10 others growing so fast in all regions in the world, and these applications wanted to access the telecom network in 200 countries. They didn't have the time or the expertise to go carrier by carrier, country by country. And we've seen that it was, I think, 2011, 2013. We've seen our revenue going from like 1 million to 20 million in 18 months period. And that has attracted the attention of investors, and they start pouring money into the market. And talking about the evolution, to move to the question that Evan just asked is, if you think about it, from our side, when we looked at the market, it's how do we make communication programmable, right? That's kind of the thinking process. We've done it successfully in messaging. We entered the voice market. We acquired a company in the programmable voice video space. So really, to move from a messaging API to a communication platform as a service, we had to be multi-channel, and we had to be programmable. And that was not surprising. We've seen many companies starting doing that, and because of the attractiveness of the market. So that was the path. Now I think we'll talk later about the evolution of the category, but I think this is what made CPaaS. CPaaS is this programmable communication with APIs. You take any programmable channel and you can program using easy to use software and APIs to do so.
Yeah, John, as a godfather, if you will, of CPaaS, did the space play out as you had envisioned, or what were some surprises along the way over the past 10 years?
Yeah, I think we're seeing an evolution even of what Tony and Jason was mentioning in terms of the early days of CPaaS, kind of what probably would be called CPaaS 1.0, which was basically about opening up the API to web developers so they can start to consume without caring about the carriers interconnect and the complexity of telecom. To now that they start to master kind of the whole communication embedding into their application, to think about how, from a business perspective, in terms of customer engagement, what does that mean from a customer perspective, and how they can best use those capabilities to better engage customers across various channels. As Tony was mentioning, there is a number of messaging players like WhatsApp and others that were growing crazy, and I think this is something that's still there today in terms of a lot of what is called OTT players or social players that where you're trying to target basically people in their own silos. Whether they use WhatsApp, whether they use Viber, and depending on which geography they're in, they can be using Line or WeChat or others. The goal is really to try to reach the subscriber or the customer on their silo of choice, on their preferred communication channel of choice, and get better at customer engagement. Really being able to target what the customer really wants to see from either marketing perspective or in terms of support perspective, so that it's not just about APIs anymore. It's really about customer engagement, and that's really exciting.
Yeah, that indeed. And Jason, what surprised you the most about the evolution of CPaaS over the past decade?
Yeah, so I would say, became mainstream, obviously. There's large public companies out there and a lot of different successes. So it's obviously come a long ways. And I'd say one of the things I've observed is, similar to John, we also took what we did in the cloud and we private labeled that and allowed carriers to use that. So we worked with Ericsson and Huawei and got embedded AT&T, China Telecom, elsewhere. And a trend that I've been seeing is really around carriers getting out of the technology business and really being marketing folks and outsourcing large swaths of what they do, and really opening up their networks in different ways. And I think a lot of that today is being driven by IoT and the messaging needs there. So you have things like the Super SIM from Twilio and others, that it's really an underpinning of how you do that. What my co-founder, Jose de Castro at Tropo, when we spun it out, he's now got his startup mapped, and they're doing intelligent building applications and things like this. And they use SMS almost exclusively for that, because the cost of doing it over data and things like this is prohibitive for what they need to be doing on these endpoints in IoT. So I see a big evolution around powering whole new use cases and device types beyond just human interaction. John's point, that's a big piece in the contact center space and how you build the multi-channel capabilities. But it's really the IoT stuff that's another growth vector that I really didn't see coming, using SMS in that way over time, when it started.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tony, let's shift from kind of the flashback retrospective to what's next. What do you see as the next big thing in CPaaS, and what will make the next wave of CPaaS companies that we're seeing successful?
Yeah, it was a question that I looked into back in mid 2019 when I was looking to start a new business, and I decided that I was attracted by the HR technology, and I pivoted. But the view was, well, you have programmable communication APIs. Okay, the next layer is what I call use case API. Jason and John mentioned that a bit, such as like 2FA API, contact center API, and so on and so forth. And then you had the introduction of low code, no code. So that essentially enable you to target a wider population. So already you have 20 million developers using APIs. What about the other 20 million non-developers, product managers, marketing managers that want to design applications and don't want to touch the code? And actually, my interviews with customer back in 2019 told me like, our developers own the customer experience and the user experience, but we don't want them to own that. We want the marketing people to own that. We want the product people to own that. How do you expose to us capabilities that enable us to have developers to be an enabler for us, but we want to be able to code without necessarily going in the low level coding aspect of an application. So the no code, low code aspect was important. And eventually, I think the after that, think about it as layers in terms of value add and evolution in the value chain. What I call is intelligent personalization of communication. So you layer in machine learning and AI technologies to predict what is the best channel, what is the best message for that user for that time. Let's say an example: if you are a remittance company and a user is trying to set up their bank account for the first time, that's a high value. You want to get them on a phone call. But if it's somebody is just want to get a notification, a status about a transfer, better send them a text message, right? So this personalization, real-time personalization of the communication would be for me like the ultimate layer that needs to come on top of what we already built in this category.
Fantastic. Jean, what about you? What's the next big thing, or what can we expect from the next wave of startups like Telestacks?
Yeah, I think I already touched on this a little bit, and I kind of go alongside with Tony in terms of what I was calling customer engagement, and have better personalization. By using kind of CRM 2.0 with customer data platform, CDPs, like we saw Twilio acquiring Segments and a number of other CPaaS provider acquiring CDP companies, that with the goal basically of improving their customer interactions and provide better personalization, so that they know when to target the person, on which channel, and for which purpose. So this to me is definitely one of the early stage. We start to see it happening already in the industry, but I think it's going to really accelerate in the next few months and few years in terms of AI and being data driven and really have kind of personalization of customer engagement. I think if I try to think even further along this, we saw things like Google Duplex, for example, was trying to emulate a real conversation with an agent, kind of emulating a restaurant. I think from a technology perspective, this may be things that may be coming as well into CPaaS, as AI and speech to text and get better and machine learning. I think we can start to think about programmable bot the same way we have chatbots today. Have kind of programmable voice bot that really feels natural, that you don't feel like you're talking to a robot, or that that feels still a bit clunky. But I think maybe not short term, but more mid-term, in terms of having almost real interaction with bots in the same way you would have with a human, I guess, to reduce the cost of contact center and so on. But this is kind of where I see the machine learning and AI being used. I would say more specific to CSPs. I would say more trying to leverage kind of the 5G assets. We hear about that, as part of the Mavenir acquisition of Telestacks, or the Ericsson acquisition of Vonage as well. There is even an open source kind of project on GitHub called Camara, which a number of vendors, CPaaS provider, and carriers join to try to define what would be the APIs for 5G use cases and how to monetize basically network as a service. And I believe that this will be a bit more specific to CSPs and kind of tie back to enterprise. And in the future, maybe longer term, the same thing will probably happen around 6G. So that's kind of the mid to short term kind of vision as I see it for CPaaS.
Wow, 6G. Wow, we're really jumping right into the future here. And Tony, if I could ask you on the telco question, we have this love-hate relationship with our local telco. More love lately, actually, through the pandemic, I'd say. But what is the role of the telco in this new world of CPaaS in the ecosystem?
Well, I think we need to be very thankful for them to build the infrastructure on which APIs has been built and on which everything else has been built, right? So they are operating this very useful resource that connect us. So for me, it's we need them to do that role very, very well and build higher level of bandwidth, quality, security, on which these software platforms will grow and thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jason, you've worked with telcos off and on your entire career. What's the optimum role for a telco? Is it build your own? Is it partner? Is it acquire? Or is it really dependent on the region, the country, the telco specifically?
Yeah, the role I see for the telco is really around access. They have access to the spectrum. They have access to scale. They are the original cloud before there was the cloud. If you think about it, telecom was always drawn as a cloud, even back in the 90s. So their role is really to provide access, and they do that at scale like nobody else. And being able to open up their networks and bring together all sorts of technologies from third parties, which is really the trend where they're outsourcing or looking for innovation outside to bring in, is where they also play a part. You look at some of the work T-Mobile's done in the past, and AT&T and others. It's not been perfect, but definitely is advancing the industry as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. And John, we talked about the first wave of applications and messaging, and we talked a lot about the next wave in terms of CX and enablers, voice, obviously, as part of that. Are there some specific use cases or applications that are an opportunity? Like, what would you build tomorrow if you had the time and the money to just build something new and fun? What do you think that would look like?
That's $1 million question for there is a number of I would say application on top of CPaaS that we already see. And Tony was mentioning two-factor authentication. There is a lot to be done on kind of revamping the traditional campaign management, in terms of blasting campaign that now looks more like spam, to something that's more targeted and more and closer to what the user actually wants in terms of communication with their companies. Something that's kind of more respectful of what they want to receive as let's say notifications. But I guess I would try to go into the next like longer term vision in terms of new technology, more on my side because I'm more on technology driven. But I would say that that would be around customer engagement for sure, and how to best improve the customer engagement as we see it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Tony, your new venture, I imagine, leverages voice and video and messaging and email and all kinds of services. Is that really the next wave of CPaaS? Is adoption by enterprises, of app developers of all kinds of the core tech? Maybe you can talk about being an HR company and leveraging CPaaS services as part of your application.
Yeah, any software company needs some sort of CPaaS capability today. I mean, there's no doubt about this. the speed of innovation and the rate of change in customer preferences has increased dramatically, and also the competition on customer experience have increased dramatically. So now customers come to expect to have a great user experience when it comes to how you reach them, how they reach you. And so that definitely my company is leveraging some of these capabilities to create this contextual communication experience for employers and employees on the platform over 180 countries.
Fantastic. And scale. I mean, how else can you reach so many countries, so many people, but through the use of mobile and internet tech? That's fantastic. And Jason, what do you see as happening next? I mean, we're in a bit of a rough patch, to say the least, in the industry. Do you see a big wave of M&A? Do you see lots of new startups? How would you predict the landscape evolving here from a business standpoint?
Constraints are always good at driving innovation, right? The less money you have in many ways gets you more creative than having, gobs of it coming in the door. So I think there's a lot of opportunity coming out. And one of the areas I believe we're seeing a shift a bit, especially in the contact center space, is away from the idea, let's replace the human. Instead, let's augment the human and provide them the tools and capabilities to reduce training time, response times, everything else to really drive those interactions in a way that are still human-esque by augmenting people. And you're seeing this, more broadly in the market. Meta's doubled down on virtual reality versus Apple's going in on augmented reality, right? And I think Apple's got the right approach in terms of how people want to interact with technologies and humanize it rather than go completely virtual. So I see a lot of opportunities in that space. There's some advancements there. Five9 is an example who's doing this in the contact center area with some of their AI work. But a lot of companies, are a victim of their own success in that you have this platform, you built it, over a decade ago, maybe even 15 years ago, and to be able to switch out the engine and come up with a whole new advanced platform is difficult. You get into the innovator's dilemma, things like this. So I do see an opportunity where upstarts would come in, take all the new technologies and capabilities that have advanced over the last decade, and really do something that's innovative and at a lower cost structure and instantly scalable with all the cloud services, everything else, and taking advantage of what would be the most modern cloud native architecture as well.
Absolutely. And the space has hit some headwinds. I mean, the de facto leader of the space, Twilio, has seen their stock price really impacted, and some headwinds out there, despite Jeff being as enthusiastic as ever at Twilio about the future, which I would tend to agree with. If you're a startup, Tony, how do you navigate those headwinds? How do you batten down the hatches to be ready for this next wave? You've done it. So what's your advice to founders, innovators, entrepreneurs, et cetera?
It's a great time to start a business right now in this industry. That's the best time ever to start, because first funding for early stage companies is still here. Not like later stage companies or public companies. So you have that advantage right now. And you have 2 or 3 years to be ready for prime time. So that gives you some time to really experiment, pivot, make some mistakes. I think it's a great time to start a business in this field.
Yeah, John, any advice? You've seen the acquisition side, you've seen the startup side. What's some good advice over the next 3-4 years, which look like will be a bit of a bumpy ride?
Yeah, I think it may be a bumpy ride given the economic situation across the world in terms of getting access to capital. But I think, again, it depends on the foundation of the company. As Tony was mentioning, if the foundation is strong and you have a great business model that is profitable, I think it's not going to be an issue to get access to capital. But I think, if we look back at all of the crises in the world, some of the best startups like Google, Airbnb, etc., were founded during those crises. So I would tend to agree that, with the constrained environment, you're trying to be more efficient and more laser focused on what is your mission statement and your purpose. And I think it's important to stay true to that. And I agree. I think those times are always hard from a crisis perspective, but also always very very good in terms of new opportunities and new pain points to be able to solve.
Yeah, these things go in cycles, and some of us even remember the .com blow up and beyond. So we have our scars to prove it. I guess we're running out of time here, but maybe just as a final question and comment, Jason, what are you most looking forward to at the run up of the holidays here? Are you gonna have some time off, some travel, just relax, or you still going 90 miles an hour right through the holiday season?
Absolutely. Well, I just got off some travel. In fact, when we were going to do this last week, I was in Cuba, and it's a good thing we didn't do it because
No
I realized
kidding.
how bad the Wi-Fi was. Right? No matter what, I don't think I would have been able to participate to this level. So it's a good thing that we delayed that.
I want to hear about that Cuba trip. That sounds
it was very interesting. It was my first time, and definitely it's a romantic place, but obviously has a lot of challenges, from the economy and things like that. So it's an interesting mix. Going forward, it's really preparing everything into 2023. There's been a lot of, as everyone knows, contraction within the tech industry and more broadly. So it's really getting everything aligned with what we're doing, at Intel or in the market at large, to really be ready to execute strongly in 2023, coming out of some, difficult financial times across the board. And again, I think that's opportunity, and I'm always looking for those opportunities. And we're right on the precipice, I think, going into 2023 for some interesting things to happen.
Yeah, never a dull moment, that's for sure.
No.
Tony, what about you? Another week in paradise or month? Is that pretty much the plan?
I'm fortunate to be the CEO of Oyster now because I can work from anywhere. So I'm going to take my work and go to Asia. So I'm going to work from Asia for a couple of weeks.
Whereabouts in Asia? Where are you considering?
In Bali. So we're going to be there. So it's going to be beautiful. And but at the same time, we're preparing for 2023. I mean, this year was a difficult year for everybody, and Oyster was no exception because we depend on the employment market.
Right.
So we're refocusing our strategy. We're extending our runway. We are doing a much more higher level of alignment and planning than I've ever seen. Getting
Fantastic.
ready.
Well, check Oyster out. I do hire freelancers, and I'm sure there might be some opportunities for me to find some folks on your marketplace. And John, what about you? What goes on in Western France? Pretty shut down right over the holidays. It's pretty quiet, pretty nice with the Christmas markets and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I'm still stuck with the kids. I'm still waiting for the kids to grow and be able to travel like Tony.
you can't say stuck with the kids. Your partner.
Oh, you absolutely can. I'm stuck with mine too.
I'm free. Mine are out of the house. I'm not stuck anymore. But thanks so much, everyone, and happy holidays. And hopefully we can do this again. There is actually an upcoming event, the SmartCom. CPaaS CX Winter Series kickoff on December 13th. So if you're not involved, get involved. Go to the CPaaS Acceleration Alliance website in the link here and check it out. So thanks everyone. Thanks for your time and insights, and thanks for what you do and accomplished in this space to open it up to many more people. And take care.
All right. Happy holidays.